Welcome to the FootBridge Energy Leadership Series, where energy leaders build what powers tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. My name is Luke Summers. I'm excited and proud to introduce the FootBridge Energy Cast, which is going to be a series of conversations with different types of leaders across energy, construction, technology that all impact the space that FootBridge operates in. And FootBridge, just to quickly introduce, we're a staffing firm. We've been around for about 25 years. We're just north of the Boston area. We started primarily in the nuclear space, but over the years evolved into oil, gas, power utility, renewables. We have also an industrial team that handles a lot of industrial capital projects. We have a manufacturing team that handles that type of personnel, but we staff project controls, project management, construction management, field personnel across a number of these different industries and exciting projects. So I'm really excited to introduce my friend, Laura Nee, the CEO of VPO Construction Project Management Software, based in Pittsburgh. Laura, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. And so you're going to be the first guest here on our FootBridge Energy Cast series here, which is super exciting. And I apologize in advance that you're getting all my first questions here. So if there's any ones that I miss or that you think would be excited to talk about today, don't hesitate to jump in. But I know we've had a number of conversations here since Greg introduced us a few months back, and it's been fascinating to learn about your story and your company's evolution over the years and just the great work that you're doing with your clients. So maybe if you could start, just a little bit about your own personal background and what you were doing before VPO. I think our audience would really find it interesting to know where you came from, and then we'll get into kind of where you're going from here.
Sure. So thanks for having me on, first of all. I got started, I didn't expect to land in the construction industry. I got my start, I went to school for, software development, computer science, information science, and got my first job out of college, actually doing an internship at an energy company based out of Pittsburgh. And I I worked there for a couple of years, but I realized that I was more in their IT department as overhead, and I really wanted to make a difference in my career and an impact on the world, and I wanted to be revenue generating for my company.
Was years in my heart.
Yeah, right. And so I switched gears and I took a consulting job that was a custom business application development firm based on Microsoft technology. And
Was that P6?
well, no. So before I got into the company that I'm in currently, I was actually a consultant for Microsoft applications.
Yeah.
And so then in 1998, I'm showing my age, but 1998, I had an opportunity to buy a business from my father, who had started a business, the business currently was a reseller for Primavera project management scheduling software, heavily used in the engineering construction industry. And I was able to get acclimated to it. I ended up buying the company after a few years of testing it out and seeing if I really wanted to own my own business. So I decided yes, and here I am. But definitely got my start in the engineering construction industry through that business. And then it actually was not P6, but rather P3 that we started with. That was Primavera scheduling. It's really flagship product that got Primavera in the engineering construction space on really large capital projects to be able to schedule and forecast timeline and resource and budget on a project or projects.
And I'm sure a lot of our audience of schedulers and cost engineers and project
Yeah.
controls people will be probably very familiar with P3, but certainly P6. We still hear that a lot in job descriptions that we have. But and then just looking at kind of the trajectory of your business, it was in the kind of the mid 2000s. You looked at VPO specifically, right? And could you explain kind of the pivot there or the change there?
Yeah, so much like my impatience with being a revenue generator in my business, then when I became a business owner, I really had a distaste for the consulting industry where, you have ebbs and flows of revenue. And so I tried to come up with an idea that would help sustain and predictively manage revenue. So I came out with a product offering called VPO, which was our own project management tool for the engineering construction space as well, that complemented the scheduling aspect but handled all of the other pieces of information on a project like RFIs, submittals, change orders, job cost management, and all the documents associated with the project. So in 2008, I had an opportunity. I was working with a client who had sold Primavera to, but Primavera wasn't going to do what they wanted to do, which was really provide this digitized electronic project management system that automated workflow between the different components or participants on a project. So taking information from an architect or from a contractor who then is going to submit it to the design firm for, clarification, requests for information, things like that, and making that a whole digital process, which in 2008, really cloud wasn't even around at that time. So it was kind of ahead of itself. I had to kind of wait to see for the market to come around. Construction usually lags a little bit when it comes to technology. And here we are, though. It has come around, and it's been really interesting working with a lot of different types of clients.
If you knew about the cloud in 2008 and you were doing some investing in that space, we probably wouldn't be on this podcast right now. That's very early days for cloud stuff.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't called the cloud. And actually, VPO stood for Virtual Project Office, which at the time, virtual was like the buzzword.
Yeah.
Now it seems antiquated. So we just go by VPO, but that's what it stands for.
Okay. And then I know you also do, in addition to your day job, do some work over with the CMAA Three Rivers. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is and your involvement there leading
Yeah.
the space?
Well, it actually is related to the first client that I was talking about. CMAA is Construction Management Association of America. And my client started the Pittsburgh chapter of CMAA. CMAA is national, but it's a standards of practice, essentially, of how to best run projects in the construction industry. And I got involved with my local chapter because my first client, Bob, had started it, and it was my way of giving back. So I really like working with helping construction professionals do better job, either with process or technology. And CMAA is definitely on the process side of things and enables us to help customers in the construction industry do more effective project management.
Awesome. Yeah, and we definitely, we should have some audience listening in from the Pittsburgh area. We've done some work down there, so
Yeah.
hopefully get some folks to those events or things that you put together there. So kind of shifting gears a little bit, I know one of the things we've talked about is kind of the workforce in construction, and obviously being in the staffing side of things, we see, we're having these conversations every day. Job descriptions increasingly will, either look for people that are remote or hybrid, or candidates maybe, hey, I'm remote only, where in the past they'd be open to being out in the field, 6 days a week, or a lot of times we still deal with road warriors, and we see kind of these generational gaps forming as far as how construction projects are handled from the personnel side. I think you're in an interesting position with your solution being, bringing these things together, enabling, people to work from a hybrid perspective or maybe completely
From
remote.
anywhere is the
Yeah. So
phrase.
I was curious, your perspective, what do you see there? Where do you see that kind of going? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, COVID happened, right? So people had to think about construction projects are so personal, right? People are together typically in person working on things, building something, designing something, maybe more so in an office, but when it comes to the actual construction of the job, it's people are in their actual location doing work. And that was a challenge, certainly with COVID, where people couldn't go to work, but they still had to work, or they still wanted to work, or they still had progress to be made. So we've seen a lot of different technology outcomes from that, I think, and the use of hardware like drones and footage to be able to be on the site without being on the site virtually. And then also just working from home. I mean, I'm a big advocate. My company has been virtual for 17 years, which is also sort of we used to lie about it. And then now it's become cool since COVID. Dogs barking, babies crying, that's a cool thing now, but back in the day wasn't. But so we've been virtual for a long time. And I think in order to be virtual and successful, you need to have the structure, you need to have data, and you need to have systems in place to help you work virtually to get the work done. So it's challenging though for people in the industry. I get it that they don't want to have to go to work, but I think in engineering construction, I think there's still a big emphasis on people making the projects work. And you still need relationships. You still need to see people on a regular basis and be in person.
Yeah, and my 2 cents, and, I'm not great at construction myself. I can't fix too much around my house, but we talk to, managers and candidates every day in the field. And take an industry like nuclear, for example. Like, there's these cultures of safety where you really have to have an understanding of inside the boundaries, and where you have to have a whole different culture of safety or something like that, where it's really hard to replicate virtually. And
Yeah.
so in our model of staffing contracted individuals, sometimes you can, bridge the gap with someone who really understands a plant environment while you train up maybe someone who's coming from an aerospace background, or a kind of a tangential, industry. So I think there's a lot of solutions and a lot of ways to solve this problem, but it is something that we're seeing more and more. And it's interesting that, companies like yours are helping to provide a solution that is really bringing all of this data together in a structured way. So,
And actually, there's this concept of building a digital twin
mm,
that I've been sort of focused on as well, is replicating the job sites virtually. So by use of a very inexpensive camera, you can actually replicate the structure of the actual building and do a lot with it from a testing perspective, trial and error, value engineering, like being able to see something virtually or digitally and being able to test out theories and concepts is really where the construction industry is going.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the how that's gonna save a lot of time and money too, not, breaking a valve that costs a lot of money, physically, maybe stress testing it virtually before you try to
Yeah,
implement
or
the
seeing
engineering.
cracks and
Same.
cements or bridges and
Yeah,
things like that. The use of I think it's the hardware, right, that is presenting data and situations, and how you respond to those is certainly up to you.
interesting. So one of my other questions, and I think this is a good time to ask it, is, about for our audience of candidates that are trying to stay ahead of the curve for different skills and different things to be aware of, what would you recommend that they're, how what can they learn about? What kind of things can they, upskill in to stay sharp? And, it sounds like some of the digital twin stuff and other things are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something that's, more practical and less shiny, but I'm curious your take on that.
Yeah, so, I really think that people need to embrace AI. I know it's a very controversial, subject, and I know that people are afraid that AI is gonna replace jobs. I think it's gonna repurpose jobs, right? So, if you think about AI and how you can use it today, it's just another tool in your toolkit. It's something that if you embrace, and the reason I bring it up is if you don't embrace it, you'll be left behind, in my opinion. I use AI on a daily basis for the silliest of things, but it's also just to keep that muscle going, to making, I think the hardest part with AI is what do I do with it and how do I use it? But you can be so much more productive just embracing the tools and actually using it. Doesn't matter which one or ones. There's not just one end all solution to AI. It's just incorporating it into your daily life, but also as a young professional, if you're looking to get in, well, in any position, embrace it because everyone is going to be using it. And if you're not, then it's like, before the internet was the internet, right? Everybody was scared of it and how it was going to change their life. And look at it now. It has totally changed your life for the better. And so I think the more emphasis you can put on learning AI and the applications of it, the better off you'll be.
and it creates a demand for a lot of energy projects that we're seeing from, the CEO of companies like Energy Transfer talking about,
Yeah.
the natural gas demand, to a lot of the data center jobs in our industrial team is
Right.
working pretty heavily on those as well. So it's interesting how it impacts other industries, and we're seeing more project load from that. But okay, so one question that I had was just about some interesting project types that you guys take place in, and thought that might be cool for our network to hear about. Some project types that you might not be thinking about on the surface, or some things that you guys are involved with that would be good for people to pay attention to and maybe have some awareness around. So, uh,
Yeah. So, I mean, especially in the energy market, talking to your audience, I mean, there's so much opportunity. Well, first of all, the data centers that are supporting the AI that we just talked about, they need to be built, but there is so much energy going on to support the data centers themselves and even like other applications. We're involved with a customer who's a steel producer, and they actually have a project. Usually they'll create steel manufacturing facilities in the middle of nowhere where nothing is already. And so they have to build a town up again around the actual location of the plant. But the energy of the plant, I mean, steel industry uses the most energy in any one area geographically. They are your energy company's number one customer because of the demand of energy that they have to run their plant. And a lot of them are actually building mini, I say mini, but like nuclear reactors at the actual physical location of the plant because they are such a big consumer of energy. And so just imagine the amount of power that these projects like data centers and I mean, just the grid, if we are really going to have electric vehicles, I mean, the energy industry in general has to support the infrastructure in order to support that. So that's going to be, producing a lot of opportunity for jobs in the marketplace too.
yeah. It's interesting, and I hope this video series doesn't delve into politics too much, but as we know, an energy policy is kind of important. And it seems like a lot of this, nuclear renaissance, or whatever you might want to call it, may have started from, a decarbonization or sustainability,
Mhm.
but it seems like even with the current administrations being sustained by just demand for power with data center, or, you know, steel plants going up, things like that. So, yeah, we've been, hearing about a lot of nuclear plant restarts. We got our start in nuclear 25 years ago, so it's really
Yeah.
exciting for us to see. And then SMR, there's a lot of interesting announcements around licensing and things like that that will should be coming down the pike in the next number of years. So that'll be one to watch for sure, and it's exciting. You guys are already a part of some of that work. Okay, so this one's a little bit of a pivot to interviewing. As a CEO, what are some things that maybe you see or don't see when you're interviewing people, or tips that might be helpful for our candidates just to have in mind? Maybe one or two things you have up your sleeve there that you can share.
So I think that people equate working virtually with casualness. And honestly, when I was interviewing for like a director of business development position, some of the people that were on the other end of the video camera were way too casual. Like, I think people think like, hey, if I can work in my without any pants on or, and like from the top up that, I don't have to look the part. But the virtual world is, I mean, it's a convenience. It doesn't replace real formality or the need for presenting yourself in such a way that it's still professional.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people show up in like V-neck, tank tops or things like that on the other side, even in an interview, because I think they think like, hey, virtual is so casual.
Yeah.
It's really not. It's just a convenience, I think, more than anything else. And you still have to represent yourself in a way that still, promotes your professionalism.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting, and I think maybe it was pretty well understood, the etiquette for interviews before COVID, and then again, I think COVID kind of shifted things where you could wear your Cookie Monster pajamas and still do work. So, I mean, we always try to do a prep call beforehand. Just, we've got a good read on the culture of our clients, and we try to
Yeah.
give some guidance around, hey, this is the team that you're going to be interviewing with. This is the
Very
maybe.
cool. I mean,
And there's a lot of times,
big
yep,
corporations, right?
a lot of times it's still, could be in an office setting. There may be, you definitely want your video on, you want to look sharp, you want to make sure you're kind of matching the energy of the person you're interviewing with. And so some of these things that you might think are silly to kind of go over. Like, we like to kind of double check that because, yeah, a lot of times, as good as you are in the skill side, that can be overlooked if you're not still presenting yourself the right way. So
And it's actually harder to do virtually, right? How do you show your personality? How do you communicate what your core values are in a way that people can respond as if you were sitting in front of each other in person? I mean, it's hard to interview and also sometimes work remotely too because of that, right? You can't. There's no chit chat. Like no idle chit chat. We've lost like the before and after an actual meeting in the virtual world, which is a shame because that's when you get to know people the most. Is not when you're talking about business.
yeah. Well, we've had some candidates that actually successfully move forward with little PowerPoints that date back to their early life history and all the way through. So some clients find that helpful to get a sense of the person, and so we try to do some other things to showcase them where we can, but without that face to face, it's a real challenge. So interesting to hear your perspective as a business leader, with that too. But so I know, again, you were at a steel industry down in Nashville where I lived for a couple years. So I was interested to kind of hear how that went. But the point of this question is, what events are you keeping your eyes on? What can our people be kind of looking out for as maybe events, or maybe it's like networking or even other certifications, things that you think are valuable, that might be good to plug for our people to kind of keep an eye on there.
I mean, there's just so many. I think the hard part is how do you spend your time?
Mhm.
Because certainly attending live events takes a lot of time and also some travel. And there's good conferences out there, and it does get you out of your regular routine, which is good because then that spurs on thought that you wouldn't have if you were just doing your day-to-day business every day. And so while conferences are nice, there are a lot of them that are virtual, so you don't have to travel.
Yeah.
And I think, at least in this industry, LinkedIn is still a very valuable tool from a networking perspective and also having resourceful information at your fingertips and looking at groups, because groups kind of combine people with like interests. And if you can get into a group, you have to find the right ones that make the most sense to you. But the groups in LinkedIn can really sometimes be somewhat salesy. So you have to be selective as to what groups. But also just like there's a Circle app that I'm a part of too it's just about collaboration or fireside chats and podcasts and different things like that. Just keeping in the know of but in different formats, right? So mixing live in-person events with resourceful information that you could literally, scan through every day for 10 minutes and be up to speed on something. And then learning, like master classes and things like that are really well in LinkedIn learning. I haven't really explored it, but I mean, there seems to be learning for everything on LinkedIn. I'm not pushing LinkedIn, I promise. I'm not. It sounds like I am, but
Yeah. Should we throw an ad in here, like a little uh click to purchase link or something?
no, it is. It's just I'm always a big fan of information and knowing like where information is value, like good information. And I think the hard part is finding what's good
Yeah.
and is good for you rather, than someone else.
Yeah. I would say, with a 6-month-old, the event circuit's been a little tough for me to get to in the last, yeah, since he's been born. But I do love in-person events because you bump into people that, you just have that before and after, like you were saying before. But I think YouTube has been a really interesting,
Oh, yeah.
especially, I'm not a construction guy by background. So when we're talking to people and we're trying to learn about projects, you can learn about LNG trains. You can learn as much as you want on YouTube about those projects and really getting
Yeah.
the nitty gritty of what's going on. And so that's kind of an interesting thing for me. And then I always try to reach out to one new person a week that's not even directly related to my job, but just someone that's posting some interesting content on LinkedIn and trying to, really just to learn from them to keep a network that's smarter than I am. And that's not hard to do. There's all the smart people out there, but just to kind of turn it into a little bit of a process. So,
We call it learning agility. It's like having that desire. Well, first of all, you have to have the desire to learn, and then how you use that muscle.
yep, yeah. And if you don't use it, it's one of those things you got to keep, just like the gym. So great. Okay. And one thing I want to ask, we're going to have guests from all kinds of different backgrounds. Well, project leaders and, staffing side and some other, everything in between, over the 6, 7, 8 episodes we'll probably do this year for the Energy Cast. And one thing I'm trying to get a consensus on is what is maybe I don't know, the coolest or like the most interesting project type or trend that you see in our space over the next 10 years? Like, what's the thing that you think in 2035 we'll look back on and would have maybe the biggest impact or be the thing that surprised the most people?
So I've been thinking about this because it kind of relates to AI,
Mhm.
and that is how your data is stored and or structured. And I think that everybody wants to go out and embrace AI, and it's such a buzzword, but it's not really effective if you can't find or filter the data. And so I was more of a mastermind session, I should say, and there were construction professionals in the business interviewed as to like what dilemma are they facing with for like using AI in as part of their company's predictive forecasts. And every single one of them was like, we have all this data for the last 20 years, but hardly any of it's relevant to helping us predict what's going to be in the future. And so I think like you have to have data in order to use AI to make better decisions, but the structure of it is really as critical as having the data and knowing how to pull relevant data versus non-relevant data out of so that you can use it in the way that you need to use it in order to make better decisions, which is again what AI in my mind is a tool that helps present a scenario to you and helps you do things faster.
Mhm.
And so I think 10 years from now, we'll be just figuring out how to structure that data
Yeah.
in a way that's really powerful to be able to use.
Interesting. Not where I thought it was going to go, but
I know,
I
right?
love it. So we'll have to do an episode in 10 years and see what the data structure looks like.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. So I mean, just not that anyone's asking, but my prediction is around nuclear. I think
Yeah.
if we can see some of this SMR stuff really get going and have smaller, safe kind of mini plants. I know like a big challenge that we hear is around transmission and distribution. It's like, hey, we can create all this power, but we can't even get it to certain places, and
Right.
it's going to take 30 years to build that infrastructure. So I think maybe some innovation around bringing that, really dense energy power to heavy population centers or industrial centers and being able to have the right infrastructure to get it there. So maybe if there's some innovation around T&D or SMR, I think those would be really cool things to track as well on my side.
Yeah.
Um, so um, okay. Well, really appreciate, I think that's all I had on my end for questions. Any other
Excited to just be the first one that you
Yeah.
interviewed. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, no, it's been
Good
great,
experience.
getting to know you over the last few months as well, and can't wait to see the success of your business to continue to grow. So
Yeah.
if we have, folks in our audience that want to connect with you or with your company, what's the best way for them to find you, Laura?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, of course, as my plug to LinkedIn, but our website is vpocloud.com. And yeah, connect with me is the best way to, um, you know, learn about us. And we're going to be doing our own podcast series here coming soon. And
I'll look for my invite in the mail.
yeah, absolutely. So no, it's interesting. I mean, deciphering what valuable information is the hard part, and so we don't want to just do a podcast to do a podcast. We're really trying to find our mission of what we want to try to tell the world, which is, how helping people really is what I'm all about.
Awesome. Well, I really enjoyed, speaking with you today. I know it's not the last conversation we'll have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nerding out on some industry stuff in the next couple of months here, but look forward to the next conversation, Laura. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.